So we start with Chesed Shebechesed, and we end with Malchus Shebemalchus, and in between there are 49 different combinations. That's after the Sefira, there's many different combinations, and really every single day you're supposed to look at what that day is, Bura Shebenetzach, understand what Bura is, understand what Netzach is, and that's the meaning you're supposed to work on that day. And if you continue up to 49 steps, you will get to Malchus Shebemalchus, which represents, of course, the King of Kings, the Kingdom of Kingdom, which represents Malchus Torah, which represents the Kodesh Baruch Hu, which represents Mashiach, which represents the Ultimate. So the question is, why do we need to start the stairway with Chesed Shebechesed? Why not Netzach? Why not Tiferet? Why not Yisoid? Yisoid means the foundation. So it should be Yisoid, should be Yisoid. It should be the foundation of foundation. That's how you start the stairway, and then you continue up the stairway. Why specifically you have to start with Chesed Shebechesed, build on that until you reach Malchus Shebemalchus. So in Parshas Vayera, by Avraham Avinu, it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent 3 malachim on the 3rd day, because Avraham Avinu, we know, had a bris milah, and he was sick, but he was so into chesed that he was more sick that he wasn't able to do chesed. Hashem took out the son to claim Hayyim. He wanted to make sure nobody would bother Avraham Avinu. And he saw that Avraham Avinu was more bothered that he couldn't do chesed. So we sent 3 malachim. But we know that these 3 malachim had 4 jobs. 1 to destroy Sodom. 1 to tell Sarah that she's going to have a baby. 1 to heal Avraham Avinu. And 1 to save Lot. Which means that there were 4 jobs given to 3 angels. And we know that every angel is sent from Shemayim only with 1 job. So how could it be that 3 angels were sent to do 4 jobs? So Chazal answer that healing of Avraham Avinu, saving Lot, healing and saving is in the same realm. But it's still a little hard to understand. The full healed Avraham Avinu, that's one shlichus. Saving life is the second shlichus. So Chazal say that really, when these malachim were sent to Avraham Avinu, they only had 3 jobs. They did not have the job to save Lot. Lot was not supposed to be saved. He was saved by the 4 kings against the 5 kings, but now he was not supposed to be saved. Why was Lot saved? Lot was saved because from Lot came Moab, from Moab came Rus, from Rus came David HaMelech, from David HaMelech comes Melech Mashiach. But actually, when the Malachim came to Avraham Avinu, Lot was not supposed to be saved because Rus, who was a Moabiyah, was Lo B'Kal Hashem. She was not allowed to marry into the Jewish nation. Therefore, she couldn't marry Boaz. There'd be no David, there'd be no Mashiach. Therefore, there was no reason to save Lot. Let's see what happened. Now, I have to tell you, I've been talking about writing a book for a very long time. And the book that I'd like to write, even though people would think that I'd be writing about working with kids, is really a book on something called spiritual DNA. There's no question from Chazal, from Medrash, from the Sfarim, that just like in the physical world, there's DNA that we get from our parents. The color of your eyes, the color of your hair, different blood types, different chas v'shalom diseases. In fact, DNA is actually spectacular. I've seen and read DNA tests to prove that certain parents are parents of children. And the way that they're matched, thousands of matches, thousands of DNA flags from the saliva of a parent and the saliva of a baby can tell you that the parent is the true parent of that child. Saliva. Surely the blood. Today, a baby in the mother's womb, a baby when the mother is pregnant, do a paternity test. See if that child belongs to the father. While the child is in the mother's womb, after 3 months, the blood of the mother will show the DNA of the child. So they can do a DNA test on a child to see if the father is truly the father before the child is even born. So in the physical world, there's a whole world that Hashem created to match the child to the parent. The Zohar says that whatever is in the physical world is mirrored in the spiritual world. And therefore, in our neshamas, there is the same DNA from our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents, and of course, the most famous proof is that Yisrael b'nei Rachmanim name. That Klal Yisrael is a nation that has pity. Because Avraham Avinu had pity. What does that have to do with me? That Avraham Avinu invited people into his house thousands of years ago. What does that have to do with Rabbi Wallerstein? And the answer is that that's part of Avraham Avinu's makeup, in his spiritual makeup. And therefore, if you find a Jew that does not have Rachmanis, it says check into his yichus, you'll find he's not a Jew. That's a pretty heavy statement. Because the DNA is the DNA. If it doesn't match, then it's not the child of that person. So there's many rayas in the Torah of spiritual DNA. There's a Rashi by Benois Tzulafchad. And the Rashi says, why were the daughters of Tzulafchad so into having the Yerusha and Eretz Yisrael? They were not the only girls that had no brothers. And Rashi says, because they came from a Shevet that came from Yosef Atzadik. And Yosef Atzadik had an unbelievable love for Eretz Yisrael. And he said, don't leave Mitzrayim without my body. Says Rashi, but because Yosef Atzadik had this love for Eretz Yisrael, it was Yashin, it was in the DNA of his Shevet, and therefore, these girls had this crazy need to have a Yerusha in Eretz Yisrael. Many, many more proofs of spiritual DNA. One of the biggest proofs of the proof I'm going to bring you today, and it is the reason that we read Megillas Rus on Shavuos. One of the reasons that it's brought down, of course, is that Rus was a Giyayris. She got the Torah. She accepted she was Makabel the Torah. And on Shavuos, we're Makabel the Torah. Was she the only Giyayris? And does she have 613 mitzvahs? I think we should read on Shavuos a story about a man who became a ger. How about the story of Yisro? Why don't we read the story of Yisro on Shavuos? Yisro became a ger. Why Rus? So Chazal say that Rus, if you add Hashem's name to Rus, a hey, becomes the word Torah. Rus with a hey spells Torah. So she was Makabel, the Torah, because she was Makabel Hashem. Rus equals 606. She had 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So when she became a Giyayris, she was Makabel 606 mitzvahs, which plus 7 is 613. Very nice. So my kash on that is, so you tell me if her name was Esther, we wouldn't read the whole story. If her name was Chana, that's it. The whole thing would go out the window. Doesn't equal up. 606. So why really do we read Rus? Specifically on Shavuos, the story of a woman being Makabel the Torah. So we have to go back to Avraham Avinu. So these 3 malachim come to Avraham Avinu. And what happens? Number 1, when you do chesed, people think, I'll wait till someone needs me and then I'll be there for them. Wrong. You have to look for chesed. Avraham Avinu was looking. He lifted up his eyes and he looked, is there anybody out there that needs my help? The difference between people who make changes in Klal Yisrael and make a difference in Klal Yisrael, everybody has the same idea. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in business, whether it's in business or it's in kiruv or it's in anything that a person does, I don't understand. I thought about this years ago. I could have done this too. And the answer is, you sat back and waited for the problem to come to you. The people who get things done are the people that look for the problems. Like Yisrael, Avraham Avinu, he looked, does anybody need help? Like Yisrael, what's the next word? If you're looking to help Yisrael, then vayah, then you'll see. If you're waiting for them to come to you, you're not going to see the problem. What problem? I don't see anything wrong. When a person goes out looking to help Yisrael, oh yeah, you're going to see a lot. So right after Vayisrael comes the word vayah. He saw, and there were 3 men standing on him, in front of him. And then the pasuk says, vayah. He saw. You already said vayah. What's the second vayah? The same pasuk. It says he saw, and they were standing in front of him. What's the second vayah? As they say in Yiddish, it's the cook. What's the second look? And look what happens after the second look. Vayaratz l'krasa. There's no more needs of Allah. There's no more they're standing in front of him. After he looks the second time, he runs to cross up to meet them. So everybody asks, you just said needs of Allah. You just said they're standing in front of him. Where's he running? You just said he saw, and they're standing in front of him, and now the pasuk says he saw, and he ran to meet them. If they're standing in front of you, you don't run to meet them. Very hard pasuk to understand. So after he looked the second time, he ran somewhere. Where did he run? It just said they were standing in front of him. Vayishtachu arza, Avraham Avinu, Avayim, who was the Avayim Goyim, who was the Rosh Hashiva, he was the Gadol, not only of the Jews, but of the whole world. What does he do to these lowly Arabs? One of them was a merchant. These were not Saudi Arabian Arabs who owned $1 million oil wells. These are 3 low-life, sweaty, smelly, stinky Arabs who came out of the desert, who were nobodies. And Avraham Avinu bows in front of them. Vayomer, and he said, carefully to this pasuk, talking about spiritual DNA. Adonai, my master, Avraham Avinu says, if I find favor in your eyes, it should be the other way around. I'm doing the chesed. If you find favor, if I like you, I'll write your check. He's saying the opposite way. He's saying, if I find favor in your eyes, I'll nosa abom el. Do me a favor, please. Don't pass my house. Can you imagine someone rings the bell, Sunday for tzedakah, and you're like, please, don't come in, don't go next door. Stay by me, I'll take care of you, food, money, whatever you need. Instead of, I can't position time, or he's not available right now. This is what our brother Avinu was saying. Do me a favor, don't pass my house. And the first thing he tells them is, you got my money. First thing he tells them is to take some water. Okay. So now he goes and he runs and he shmal and they work and they put together and they have all this food and they bring it out and they serve, right? The pasuk says that they serve, they serve the food. Abraham and Yishmael serve the food. And he stood there, Avraham Avinu, as a waiter. He stood upon them. Oh, by the way, he didn't sit with them. He stood next to them. He's the waiter. What can I get you? He was the waiter. So they sat under the tree by Yechelo and they ate. So they said to him, I don't understand. These 3 Arabs turned to Avraham Avinu and said, I don't understand. We're Middle Eastern men. What's the deal over here? Since when do men serve food? You got a wife? Why didn't you bring out the food? You're supposed to be sitting with us, eating, and the woman is supposed to be serving. Well, what kind of house are you running over here? You're the waiter? You're bringing out the food, taking out the dishes, setting the table. This is not the way it works. So they asked him, where's your wife? So he says, Avraham Avinu, by me it works differently. This is a Jewish home. The woman doesn't come out and serve men, strange men. that come to the table. That's not sneezing. So Rabbi Avinu passed in a woman's place, when there are men from the outside that come to the house, is not to come serve. So he told these malachim, not knowing they were malachim, where's she supposed to be? I'm the one who's serving. She cooked the food, she took it, but she's in the oil. I'm the one who's serving. So they said, okay, next year we're going to come back. At this time she's going to have a baby. The Sarah, Shemas, Pesach, Ha'ovel, Uhu, Acharav. The Torah tells us exactly where she was. She did not leave the tent. She stood by the door behind the Malachim and Avraham Avinu, and she overheard what the Malachim said. The Torah is very specific. She never walked out of the tent. What happened at this point? At this point, something in Shemayim that changed everything. It was a game changer. Avraham Avinu passed to the woman's place when it comes to serving people from the outside. It's not serious to serve the people, but the man should serve the people. The Moabim, the reason why Yahweh B'Kal Hashem that we can't marry from Moab is because when the Jewish nation left Egypt and we were on our way to Eretz Yisrael, we were starving and we were thirsty. And we stopped by Moab and we asked them for food. And they said no. No food, no water. Said HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The DNA of Klal Yisrael is B'nai Rachmanim. I don't want mixed into the spiritual DNA of my nation a nation that is not B'nai Rachmanim, that can look at children and women and men who are hungry and not give them to eat. Therefore, Lo Yavai, Amayni, and Moabi cannot be part of Klal Yisrael. I don't want that DNA in Klal Yisrael. Therefore, Rus, who came from Moab, would not be able to marry into Klal Yisrael. But what happened here? Avraham Avinu passed in La Halacha that a woman's place is not to go out and serve. Therefore, the women of Moab had an excuse. It's not that I'm not B'nai Rachmanim, I had pity on them. But it's not serious to go out and serve men and serve people. The men of Moab were supposed to do that. Avraham Avinu himself said we're not supposed to do that. So once that was passed in, there was a door, there was a window to allow the women of Moab to marry into Klal Yisrael. So now, there was a reason to say, well, because from him came Moab, came Rus, and now because Avraham Avinu passed in so now the women of Moab have a way to marry in to the Jewish nation. Therefore, Rus could marry in. Therefore, Lo had to be saved. So the shlichus that the Malach had when he left Shemayim was not to save Lo. But after he came to Avraham Avinu, and Avraham Avinu asked him that a woman's job is not to go serve, now there was a reason to save Lo. So therefore, it was a new shlichus, it was a new shlichus to do. Therefore, now this Malach had a new shlichus, and he went and he saved Lo. So we see that the whole Malchus Shema, the whole Davar HaMelech, the whole Mashiach had to start with Chesed Shebechesed. Because Avraham Avinu was not chayiv in Chesed, he was sick. He was not chayiv to go out and do any Chesed whatsoever, any Hachnasah. But he went the extra step, even though he was sick in a Cholos Pater, and he did a Chesed Shebechesed. He went to do a Chesed for these 3 hours. Through the Chesed Shebechesed came the question, Ayei Sarah Ishtecha. Through the question, Ayei Sarah Ishtecha, came V'hinei B'Ohel. Through V'hinei B'Ohel came Rus and the Malchus of God. Therefore, the first step, which happens to be on Pesach, which happens to be when the 3 angels came to Avraham Avinu, the first step in this ladder to get to Malchus of the Malchus has to be Chesed Shebechesed. Now let's go and look at Megillas Rus. So Megillas Rus starts off, we all know that It was just the opposite. That Naomi and her husband ran away from Eretz Yisrael, but they didn't want to do chesed. Didn't want to do chesed. People knocked on the door. The whole Klal Yisrael needed food. He had food to give them, but he didn't want to be bothered, so he ran to Moab. The absolute opposite of what Avraham Avinu. He robbed Haaretz. Right? He went to stay Moab. Elimelech, his wife, and his two kids. Now, why? By Avraham Avinu, and I think it's very important when it comes to being a Rebbe, when it comes to being a husband, a wife, especially when it comes to being a parent, to understand what Avraham, the father of Klal Yisrael, what that second Vayar means. It says Vayar, meaning not that they were standing in front of him, but that second Vayar, Vayar to the cross. So, in Rashi's Sefira Mitzayra, talks about when a kohen looks at someone who's tamei with zeras, and the pasuk says that the kohen has to look twice, Vayar, and then again Vayar. Why? To make a Jew tamei, you can't make a Jew tamei with one look. The kohen has no right to say, even though he's looking at zeras, to say tamei unless he takes a second look, because it's the second look that gives you the real look. So when Avraham Avinu took the first look, he did need some olav. There was no action. He was standing there. This person looks like they need something. The second look tells you, by your odds, you cross them. If you take the second look, that will give you the ability to cross them, to meet them. What does that mean? Let me give you an example. Rabbi Wallerstein, who's the dean of my girls' high school. So we used to have a high school in Muncie called Maine. The kids who have gone through very, very hard times in their life, and they're struggling with a lot of things. So we hired a new teacher. And the teacher comes to school, and the girls are not dressed very theistic, to say the least. But in school, you have to wear a uniform. And there's this one girl who has her buttons open. So she comes to school and she tells her, "Excuse me, I can't teach like this. Close your button." The girl closes the button. Next day she comes to school, the button's open. She says, "Close your button." She closes the button. Next day she comes to school, the button's open. She goes on for 30 days. She tells her to close the button. She doesn't fight her. She doesn't say no. She closes the button. Next morning, button's open. Finally, after a month, the teacher comes to Rabbi Greenwald. She says, "Rabbi Greenwald, I can't teach this kid. Every single day, I tell her to close the button. She closes the button. And the next day, she comes back with the button open again. She's a machutzah. I am not allowing this girl to my class. It's either her or me." Not a smart thing to tell other people. So he turns to her and he says, "Well, how long is this going on? A month? Seems to be that whatever you're doing is not working. You should have caught on to that." He says, "Let me ask you something. I understand what she's doing to you. Did you ever ask her, like, why? Did you ever sit down and say, you close your button, then you come back with an open, you close your button, you come back with an open? What is going on in your life? What is going on at home? You close your button at school, then you come back with your button open. Something's going on at home. Is there some dysfunction? Is there some abuse? Is something going on at home? You need help?" You answer that question once. No. He says that you shouldn't be teaching in my school. Because you only have a vayar, one thing, you only see, but you're not having that second look. The second look is, why? What's really going on in this person's life? What's really happening in this person's life? Sure, the first look tells you that there's something wrong. She's not behaving the way she's supposed to. She's fighting the system. That's the first thing. You need some olive. That's in front of you. But where's the vayar, yoretz, the krasa? How do you meet that person? How do you connect to that person? There has to be a second vayar. There has to be a second one. The story of Rav Shach where there was this boy in Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. They threw him out. I think he was Machal Shabbos. They threw him out. So the two Rosh Yeshivas, true story. The two Rosh Yeshivas brought a boy, not such a pasha. So they came to Rav Shach for his Hashkama. The boy was Machal Shabbos for Hesed. He's going to affect the whole Yeshiva. So they come to Rav Shach. And they said, we have this boy, we have to throw him out. We just want, a Hashkama for Rosh Yeshiva. So Rav Shach said, what's his name? So they said, Chaim, whatever. He said, no. What's his name? Chaim Schwartzberg, whatever. He said, no, what's his name? We don't understand. What does Rashida want? He says, what's his name? Chaim Ben what? What's his mother's name? We don't know his mother's name. You don't know his mother's name? You didn't die to him? You didn't fast for him? And you threw him out? You don't know his mother's name? You didn't say the whole Tehillim to this boy? Get out! You threw them both out. Famous story. You call yourself a Shivas? You don't know the boy's mother's name? And he threw him out of his house. Only one bayar? You only took one look? You don't know what's going on in his family? You didn't die for him? You didn't fast for him? And you're ready to throw him out? Get out. Throw him out. From Avinu, Vayar, it's the second look. Vayar is the cluster. And believe me, if you take the second look, then you're going to say, Al Nasa Akbar. Don't leave me. When you take the second look and you see the pain that person's going through and what's causing, what you see is just a symptom, it's not the disease. When you find out what's driving it, what's the disease, I promise you, you're going to say, Al Nasa Akbar, Maladecha. Please don't leave, stay there, I'm going to help you. Problem is that we only take that first look. There'd be no Rus. There'd be no David HaMelech, there'd be no Mashiach. There was no second look. I shopping. I like Chabanash's close one. So Friday I shopping. Chabanash is a lady, whoever shops at Chabanash knows this little thin, blonde lady that sits outside. And she collects sometimes inside, sometimes outside. And I feel very good. Every week I go, I give her $1. Give me a bracha. Make some kind of comment always. You look so young, give her another $1. So I feel good about myself. And a lot of people know. I give her $1, a quarter, whatever it is. 2 years ago, it was a cold day. I came out of Chabanash, I put my $1 in a cup. And as I'm about to walk away from her, this must be a 16-year-old girl, Jewish girl, is coming across the street for the pizza, Jerusalem pizza. And she has a hot coffee and a Danish. And she comes and she gives it to the lady. And I'm standing there and I'm like, years I'm doing this. Years. I'm giving this woman $1. I have never bought her a coffee. I have never bought her a Danish. Do you think she ever walks away from Chabanash to get a coffee and a Danish? Of course not. Because she thinks that she's going to walk away for 5 minutes, she's going to lose 5 people, she's going to lose $5. So she sits there the whole time. This girl, this 16-year-old girl, had a better insight into what chesed is than me with all my dollars. She understood it's freezing. She's hungry. She's not getting off that milk box. Because she's going to be scared when she gets off, she's going to miss 5 people. So this girl went across the street, bought her the coffee, bought her the Danish, brought it over to her, so that she doesn't have to get up. That's a vayar. That's a second look. That's looking past the cup and understanding that the cup is connected to a hand. And the hand is connected to a person who has feelings, who might be hungry, who might be cold. The first look is just a cup. So you put $1 in it. The second look tells you the cup is connected to a human being. The first look to a kid who's struggling on the street is look at this kid, Chal Shabbos. Look how she's dressed. What a disaster, what an embarrassment. What happens when a kid comes home and she's doing what she's not supposed to do? Or a boy, what's the first thing we say? How can you do this to us? Look what you're doing to your family, your sister's never gonna get a shit up. You know how much money and how hard your father works? You should be able to be in yeshiva. Look what you're doing to your father. Look what you're doing to me. Look what you're doing to your sister. Look what you're doing to your brothers. Look what you're doing to the family's name. You think that kid says, hey, Mukham Zuman, look kind of aggravate my brother, sister, my father, my mother, and everybody else? You think that's why they're doing what they're doing wrong? They're doing it to get attention. So what do? We say, look what you're doing to me. We're giving ourselves attention. Look what you're doing to your sister, your brother, the family. Meanwhile, the second look is, look what you're doing to you. Why are you doing this to you? I don't think you no matter what we're in school. Doing it when we're struggling, doing it when we're going through stuff. All that rubber beans got us. With a second bite out. So now, let's take a look at Rus. Rus was a Moaviyah. We today don't understand. A Moaviyah was a Nazi. Yamach Shemai, in the days of the Jews. They were so hated by us. Number one, they didn't give us to eat. Number two, they were the most immoral nation in the world. They came into Avos Moab, and 24,000 Jewish men died because of the immorality. They hired Bilam to curse us. They, in the Torah, were our arch enemy. Moaviyah, Moab, the arch enemy of the Jewish nation. And you have this girl who's a princess of Moab. And because she's a non-Jew and she marries a Jew, after 10 years, Machlon and Chilion both die. And now, when Naomi, I'm not going to get into the whole Pasha, when she became a ger, because it's a very interesting, very, very interesting. The men should really spend a lot of time on this, on Shavuos. It's very interesting because Lamaisa, if she was a ger, if she became a ger when she married them, then how come they were punished that they died? If she became a ger when she married them, then how did Naomi have a right to send them back to Moab? If they were gerim, you can't send them back to Moab. So how could Naomi send them back to Moab? But if they weren't gerim, then there's no din in Yibum. If there's no din in Yibum, what's the whole story with Boaz and Pani Ammoni? If she was a guy when she married Machlon and Kilion, then there's no chiv in Yibum. So what's this whole rus with I'm the Goyel and I'm not the Goyel, and Pani Ammoni gives it up, and Boaz becomes, there's no Goyel, there's no Yibum. There's a guy, there's no Kiddushin. And if it's a Jew, how did Naomi send him back? Huge machlokes in this. Very fascinating. Just one thought, that really they became Jews to get married, which is not a good gerus. What did Naomi say? Naomi said, go back to where you came from. If they go back, it shows them Afreya that they only got married for the wrong reason, therefore the gerus is no good. If they don't go back, then the gerus is good. So Orpah went back, showed she was a guy. She never really was a guy. No, she was Dafka boy. She was Dafka boy. She held on to Naomi. She said, I'm not going back. Therefore, Amech, your nation is my nation. Because Lemafreya, I'm showing you that my gerus was a real gerus. And therefore, according to that man, the Amar, there was a chiyuv in Yibum. But it's very fascinating. There's a big machlokes and there's a lot of mafarshim on it. But that's off the subject. So you have to understand that Rus was totally unaccepted by the Jewish nation. At that point, we were not sure if a woman from Moab would be accepted by the Jewish nation. Take a look at what happens. Amazing. So he comes to the field, Boaz, first of all, a very big lesson in life. And he comes to the field, what does he say? So he comes to his workers, he comes to his workers, and he says to the guys who are harvesting, what does he say? What do you say to the boss when you walk into the office? No? Did you finish the work? Why is your desk so messy? Why are you late today? Did you do everything you were supposed to do? Right? That's what a boss says. So what is Boaz? You have to understand who Boaz was. He was the Gadol Hadar, he was the king, he was the Shofet, he was the head of Bezdin, he was the Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Rav Chaim Kanievsky on 100 times higher level. He was the ultimate, the king, the Shofet, the Rosh Bezdin. He was very old, he was respected, he was rich, he was the man, above everybody. So now he's coming to his field. What does he say to his workers? He opens up with this statement. Hashem imachem. God should be with you. Imagine you come to work in the morning and the boss walks in and says, everybody, just want you to know one thing. God should be with you. And all the workers answer back, V'recha Hashem. And God should bless you. Could you imagine a day that starts at work with the boss walking in and saying, God should be with you, and all the workers turning to the boss and saying, and God should bless you? That is a place you want to work. Could you imagine in school, if you're a principal or a teacher, and when the kinderlach, I don't care if they're first graders or 10th graders, walk into the room, instead of saying, take your books out, tuck your shirt in, take out your homework, tie your shoelace. Why are you late? Imagine if the Rebbe or the Mora walks in and turns to these kids and says, good morning, Hashem imachem. Today, God should be with you. And the class turns to the teacher and says, Mora, Rebbe, Yivarecha Hashem. Hashem should bench you. You think that class and that Rebbe is not going to be successful that year? It's going to be the most successful class in the world. The Gadol Hadar is teaching us how to speak to workers. The first word is not do this, why did you do that, why did you do this? The first word is Hashem imachem, Hashem should be with you. And their words back is Yivarech Hashem. Imagine between a husband and a wife. So when a husband leaves in the morning, the husband turns to his wife and says, Hashem imachem, Hashem should be with you today, Sefira. And she turns to him and says, and Hashem should bench you. Imagine what a kind of marriage that is. And when he comes home, she says, Nu? He says, Hashem was with you today. She goes, Nu, Hashem, it was a good day. Hashem benched you. Imagine you tell that to your children in the morning before they go to school. Hashem imachem, Hashem should be with you. God should be with you. You think they're going to have a question later on when they're 16, 17, 18, is there a God? Of course there's a God. My mother tells me every morning, God should be with me. And I tell my mother every morning, my father, God should bless you. I have a question if there's a God. This was Boaz. This was a gadol. This was understanding. So this was the reaction that he got in the field. Now there's this girl in the field, and she's very different than all the other girls. All the other girls, when they do leket, they're bending down to pick up the wheat. She's curtsying, she's going down. So she's not bending over. So she's a tznuah. So Boaz asks the head man, the foreman, who's running the whole business, who is this girl? So what does he say? He said, do you want to know who she is, Rabbi? She's a Moaviyah. She's a lowlife. She's immoral. We don't even know she's Jewish. She's a Moaviyah who came with Naomi. Remember Naomi? The one that left Klal Yisrael? Left us without food? And went to Moab? Yeah, she came back with Naomi. You know from where? He's doing a good description. From the Sidei Moab. She came from the fields of Moab. He didn't say one positive thing about her. She's a tznuah. Everyone else is bending over. She's curtsying. So say, oh, you know who she is? I don't know. She came from Moab, but wow, she's so modest. But he only had a one vayar. He only had one look. He was a nar. He took one look. Who is that? It's a Moaviyah.
That was his whole report. Not a positive word in the whole report. So how does the Gadol Hadar react to this report? Vayomer Boaz al Rus. And Boaz says to Rus, the first time he speaks to her, Halo Shamat Biti. Listen to me, my daughter. My daughter? The Gadol Hadar is calling a Moavia girl his daughter after getting a report from his main man that she's a lowlife? BT? His daughter? That's what he says. He says, listen to me, my daughter. Al telchi litko b'sada acher. Don't you dare go to somebody else's field. And now comes the spiritual DNA from Chesed Shebechesed. V'gam lo sa'avuri mizeh. Don't pass through my field. You already said, I'll tell Chiluko b'shada acher. You just said, don't go into another field. Why is he saying, I'll not ta'avuri mizeh? You said it already. And the answer is that thousands of years before this, in the creation of Rus, Avraham Avinu through Chesed Shebechesed said the exact same words to the three Malachim. Al nor sa'avar me'al avdecha. The same words came out of Boaz's mouth thousands of years. He said, don't go to another field. And he said, don't pass through here. The same exact words. And what's the first thing he tells her to do? Take water. Exactly what Avraham Avinu said. He said, you're thirsty. The first thing he says, go take water. What goes around comes around. The chesed that you do is not just for you. It's for your children and your children's children, and 2,000 years later, your children's children's children. But listen to this conversation between Rus and Boaz. So he says the following. Go get something to drink, v'tzamas, you're thirsty. Go to the kelim, v'shasis, and drink. V'tipol apaneha. She falls on her face like Avraham Avinu fell on his face in front of the Malachim. V'tishtachu art, so she bows to the ground like Avraham Avinu bowed to the ground by the Malachim. V'tomer elav, and she said, and I have heard this 100 times from my high school students, from girls that I work with, from boys that I work with, that are off the derech, that are struggling. I have heard this question hundreds of times. And she asked it straight up, one-on-one, to the Gadol Hadar. And she says, Madua, why? Why are you talking to me so nice? I'm a Moaviyah. I'm a lowlife. I'm a nobody. I have no self-respect. I have no self-esteem. The Medrash says that they try to take her physically and throw her over the fence. Because he says to her, don't worry, I'll make sure. The pasuk says, I'll make sure that my boys will not touch you. Frek Chazal, touch her? These were from boys. Why do you have to tell her that they're not going to touch her? And the answer, Chazal says, because they tried to pick her up and throw her over the fence. Because they said, chutzpah, you're a guy. How dare you take tzedakah that belongs to Jewish girls? So he said to her, I will make sure they don't touch you. They wanted to throw the grandmother of David HaMelech over the fence. Because they saw a Moaviyah. They saw a lowlife. So they were going to take the grandmother of David HaMelech and throw her over the fence. She's called Aim HaMalchus. By Shlomo HaMelech, it says she was still alive. And when it says Aim HaMalchus, the mother of Klal Yisrael's Malchus was Rus. But if you only have one look, and you see this kid on the street, and they're not dressed correctly, you want to throw him over the fence. And Boaz said, they won't touch you. No one's throwing you over the fence. And she asked him, why you? Why did you give me this attention? And she says it straight out. Why did you even recognize me? Why did you stop to ask me what's going on in my life? Every person, what we're looking for, what every kid is looking for, what every husband and wife is looking for, is recognition. It's the big word. Lahaki Reini. Why did you give me recognition? I don't understand. I'm not the goody-goody. I'm the Moaviyah. So she asked him straight up, why? She says, I'm a guy. You're the Gadol Hadar. Why are you calling me BT? What's going on over here? Nobody likes me. Everybody judges me. Why are you different? So he answers her, Vayan Boyaz. What a discussion. Vayan Boyaz, Vayoyimala, I'll tell you why. Hugad Li. It was told to me, how you stuck by your mother-in-law. You left your father, your father's house and your mother's house, the Eretz Moladetech, and the place where you were born. Who else did that? Avraham Avinu. Boaz is saying, you are an Avraham Avinu. You might be a Moaviyah, but you left it all. For what? To come to a nation that you don't even know. You don't even know who we are. We're treating you like you're nothing, like you're nobody. We want to throw you over the fence. You gave this all up? You're an Avraham Avinu. Of course I'm giving you attention. And he gives her a bracha. Yishalem Hashem pa'alech. Hashem should pay you back. Gives her a big bracha. So she answers him. I have found favor in your eyes, my master. Now we know that this was a woman that was struggling. A woman that had low self-esteem. A woman that was unaccepted. How do we know this? Because she uses a very powerful word. She says, you consoled me. If you're not in pain, you don't need to be consoled. You, the Gadol Hadar, you consoled me. How do you console a person who's in pain? How do you console a kid who's struggling? How do you console a person who's struggling? Says the pasuk, because you spoke to my heart. You didn't look at the name and the label they gave me. Kid at risk, kid at this. Kid at risk by me anyway is a big bracha. I wasn't even a kid at risk. Risk means you have something you can lose. Risk is not a bad thing. At least you have something. No label, she said. You didn't label me a Moaviyah. You didn't label me nothing. Dibati Alein, you were able to see past everything. You were able to talk to my heart. And then she says, and I know that someone who has the second vayar, someone who is able to look past the label and to look into the other person's heart and see their struggle, she says, I know something. I know that I'll never be like just a maidservant. I know that you'll always treat me like your own daughter. And that's the godless of the second vayar. That's the godless of being able to see the other person's pain and being able to understand that every single person is BT, is Achaisi, and to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at us. And therefore we go to Matan Torah, and you have to read Rus, and you have to understand that the father of Moshiach, the only way to bring a Moshiach into this world, the only way to bring Malchus Sheba Malchus in this world, is a combination of Chesed Sheba Chesed. It's a double Chesed. And a Tznuah. For had Avraham Avinu not paskin that a woman's place is not to come out amongst the men, Rus would have never been able to marry into Klal Yisrael. And if you take Chesed Sheba Chesed and you combine it with the tznius of Klal Yisrael, then on the 49th day, you can reach Malchus Sheba Malchus. I want to end 2 minutes. The story, and I can tell you, anyone who's in chinuch knows exactly what I'm talking about. And every parent, you got to have that second look. The first look is not real. The first look is a symptom. It's the rash. Why do you have the rash? You got to find out where the rash is coming from. We're going to treat the rash with calamine lotion, and you have strep. It's not going to help. You're going to get a headache afterwards. You're going to get fever. Everyone's very busy reacting to the symptom. The second look, Vayar, is to find out what's the disease, what's driving the symptom. You give an antibiotic, the whole strep is gone, all the symptoms are gone. Only a silly doctor treats the headache and the diarrhea and everything else with a different medicine, and in the end, the person's going to get strep in their heart, they're going to end up dying. So the smart doctor says, that's just that rash and that fever, that's just a symptom. You need a strep culture. And then one antibiotic, it's all gone. That second look is the godless. That was the Vayar Vayorotz that Avraham Avinu had. It's such an unbelievable story, Boaz. It was amazing. There was one other thing about him, which has a lot to do with Project Inspire, and a lot to do with getting things done and being the father of Mashiach. When she came back, when Rus came back to her mother-in-law, the night after she went into the silo and uncovered his legs, and she said, I'm here because somebody has to do Yibum, somebody has to take the Yerusha and the Achuzah, and somebody has to take responsibility for me. So she comes back, she tells her mother-in-law everything that she did. She brought back six things of grain, and her mother-in-law makes a statement. She says, don't worry. He will not rest till the deed is done. That's what she says to Rus. Boaz is not a procrastinator. You told him that there's a need, and the pasuk says, she says, don't worry, Rus, the day will not go by until he solves the problem. The second look has to be Vayaratz across them. You can't sit back and then say, okay, now I know what it is, it'll be okay. Boaz didn't sit back for 1 second. He came, he called the Bezin together, he called Ploni Ammoni together. There was no time to wait. It's the other midah of Mashiach, of getting something done. I'm trying to end, I'm late, started late. I'm trying to end with a very, very fast story about one of my Talmidim from many, many years ago. Talking about a second look, about a girl actually. So I had this boy Talmud, I'll tell it to you very fast, and I teach in Crown Heights Yeshiva in Mobasin, and he never got to my class on the 8th grade Rebbe. In 6th grade, they threw him out. They caught him in the stairway, whatever. They threw him out of school. He ended up going to public school, but I stayed in touch with him. His name was Howie, and I didn't see him for many, many years. His brother was in my class. His brother graduated Crown Heights Yeshiva. They're not religious, nothing, and his brother invited me to his wedding. So I came to his brother's wedding. In the non-religious circles, they have what's called the Hava Nagila dance. There's this one dance they put at the Mechitza for the rabbis. They play Hava Nagila, you dance with the chassan, that's it, you get 2 minutes. After that, the Mechitza goes down, forget about it, right? So, but the Rebbe always gets the Hava Nagila dance for 2 minutes. The band is not a Jewish band, they know how to play one Jewish song, Hava Nagila, and then we leave. We dance at the chassan and we leave. So I'm sitting at the table, at the chassan's table, and his brother's sitting there, this kid Howie, who's very anti because he got thrown out of yeshiva. And he's sitting there, he's full of tattoos from head to toe. He's sitting with a non-Jewish girl, his girlfriend, who's sitting there in front of me, like a halacha. He's trying to get to me to make me really angry, so it's not a pretty sight. Anyway, it comes to the Hava Nagila dance, so I turn to Howie, I say, Howie, how about dancing with Rebbe? So he turns to this girl, who's not Jewish, and he says, do you mind if I dance with the rabbi? She makes the biggest mistake of her life, and she says, no, I don't mind, dance. So he gets up to dance, and anyone who knows Rabbi Wallerstein is, I say the way it is. So we get up to dance, and we're dancing, and I grab him, and I give him this big fat kiss on his left cheek, and in his ear I whisper, no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to get me angry, you need to know something. I will always love you, so you don't have to do this stuff. And then I turned his head, and I gave him a big fat kiss on his other cheek. And I whispered in his ear, but you know, you're going to hell. Rambam says, hug him and hit him. Love him, but then tell him the way it's at. Okay, so we're talking a little bit, and he's a Buddhist. And he's been up there, and he's fasted, and he's done all the Buddhist stuff. And he's got these two huge tattoos on his arms, two huge Buddhas. Mamash Avodah Zarah on his body. So we start talking, I'm like, he's a Buddhist. I said, why don't you come to my Tuesday night Chabura and talk to the guys, about Buddhism. I'll talk about Judaism, you'll talk about Buddhism. We'll have a little ism talk. He's very excited, he's going to get a chance to talk about his Buddhism. So he comes to my shir, without her, and he starts to talk about Buddhism, whatever it is. And of course I'm making chayzik, this little fat guy, Buddha. The guy can't lose weight for thousands of years, he can't lose 5 pounds, he sits there with a big belly. How can he be God? I mean, come on. Right? And I make fun of it, and we're going back and forth, and to make a long story short, we go through the whole thing. He starts coming back every Tuesday night. He gets rid of this gaita. He's interested in growing. I send him to Eretz Yisrael. I send him to Eish HaTorah. It doesn't work, because in Buddhism they have this whole, it's very not logical, it's very spiritual and emotional and warm, and he needed Chassidus. He needed Chassidus because he wasn't a brainiac, and the logical stuff, that wasn't for him, this was for him. So he needed Chassidus. I was in Eretz Yisrael, I was panicking because he didn't want to go to Eish anymore, and he fell in, Baruch Hashem, Chassidus. So, not important which Chassidus. So, to make a long story short, he's there for 2 years, he's growing, it's Geshmak, the hottest day in Eretz Yisrael. His sweater's up to here because he's got these tattoos. His sleeves are up to here. He goes to the mikveh when there's nobody there. He's ashamed, but what can he do? Anyway, he calls me up. He's coming back to America. I said, why? He says, I'm 21 years old. It's time for me to date. There's no way I'm going to marry an Israeli girl. No one in Israel is going to marry me. In America, I'll find a Balas Tshuva from a motorcycle gang. She has tattoos and I have tattoos. It'll work out. Even though I have Buddha, it'll work out. I'm like, listen, it was right, Mama's right before Pesach. I said, stay till Pesach, after Pesach, come home. Because Baruch Hu runs the world, his Rosh Hashiva reads a Mashiach, like 4 weeks before Pesach. This girl from Kfar Chabad, regular home, from girl, he's like, Rebbe, I got to tell her that I have tattoos. I mean, sooner or later she's going to find out. No way this girl's going to marry me. She's a straight Kfar Chabad, Beis Yaakov girl. There's no way she's going to marry me. I'm like, listen, don't tell her till the 5th date. By the 5th date, she'll have some feelings for you. You have a chance. You'll tell her. If she can't get past it, she won't get past it. You're going to tell her up front you got Buddha on your arms. It's not going to happen. This is not going to happen. Okay, so he goes out. He really likes her. She really likes him. Comes the 5th date, he calls me up. He says, I don't know where I'm going. Now you have to tell her. Now it's not right. Now you have to tell her. So he says, okay, I'm going to tell her. So he tells me over. End of the 5th date. So he turns to her. They're parked outside Kfar Chabad. And he says to her, there's something that I want to tell you. So she's figuring that he's going to propose. Right? 5th date, Chassidisha. Even dating was like, so 5th date is like, whoa. So like, he's definitely going to propose. He says, but I don't want you to be shocked. So she's thinking he's going to propose. She goes, no, I won't be shocked. Say what you want to say. So he says, well, I'd like to show it to you. So she says, I don't understand. He says, let me show you my arm. And he opens up his sleeve, and she's like, and he pulls up his sleeve, and there's this big tattoo of a Buddha with a snake. And she looks at the tattoo, and he says, I have one here, I have one on my other arm, I have one on my back. And I completely understand if you don't want to marry me. Quote. She turns to him and she says, Chaim. He's no longer Howie. It's Chaim Shalom. She says, Chaim Shalom, I want to tell you something. I don't see the tattoos on your body. I see the tattoo in your neshama. I have never met somebody with a tattoo in the neshama of a Yud K, Vav K like you have. If you have no problem, I have no problem marrying you. They're married, they have 3 kids, Knai Nahara. They live in Bnei Brak. He has come and spoke in our Nava about his whole trip and everything that he went through. We call it from Buddhism to Judaism. From tattoos to tefillin. This girl had the ability of having a second vayah, seeing past the chitzonius and seeing the pneumius of a Jew, that every single Jew has a tattoo in their soul that has Hashem's name. Yud Kei Vav Kei. There was a Rebbe, I don't know who it is. This is my last line. I just heard it this week, so I guess I heard it in order to share with you. And the Rebbe said the following. He said there are two types of Jews. There are religious Jews, and there are Jews who will become religious. Have a good Yom Tov.